Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, was not accustomed to anyone doubting his words. He had always been a person with clear beliefs and a deep understanding of political processes. However, when he agreed to an interview with the renowned journalist Nora, he had no idea that it would become a turning point in his life. They sat in a modern, stylish cafe in the heart of the city. Through the large windows, plenty of light streamed in, and the sounds of street life gently filled the atmosphere of their conversation. It was raining outside, but inside it was warm and cozy. Nora sat across from him, holding her notebook and microphone, ready to ask questions that would make Jimmy think. "Jimmy, you are one of the most well-known and respected politicians in U.S. history," Nora began, her voice calm and professional. "But many people have questions about your views on current politics. Could you share your thoughts on the current president, Donald Trump?" Jimmy paused for a moment. The question was unexpected, and although he anticipated sensitive topics being raised in the interview, this question immediately triggered a surge of emotions in him. His lips tightened, and he slowly raised his gaze to Nora. "Nora," he began, his voice calm, but with a deep emotional undertone, "I have many thoughts on Trump and his impact on our country. However, in my opinion, the problem lies not so much in Trump's personality, but in the fact that so many people in the country allow him to dictate their will. He exploits people's and society's weaknesses to create polarization and fear." Nora listened attentively, but her eyes seemed already prepared to ask the next question. "But why do you think this is happening now? Why is this issue so important to you?" Jimmy relaxed, almost unconsciously reaching for his coffee cup, which he hadn't even noticed. The words came naturally, flowing like a river. "Because we're losing our ability to have dialogue. We no longer hear each other. Today, we're prone to radical beliefs instead of finding common ground, understanding each other. I believe that underlying all of this is injustice. And Trump is just one symptom of a larger problem. We can't afford to be indifferent." Nora carefully took notes, but couldn't ignore the moment when Jimmy's emotion surfaced. He was passionate and convinced of his position, yet instead of appearing aggressive, he seemed whole and confident. She decided to continue, observing his reactions. "And what do you want to happen next? How can the situation change?" Jimmy was silent for a moment, his gaze becoming thoughtful again. He sighed gently. "I believe in the power of words. I believe in the power of dialogue. We need to learn to listen and understand, even when it's difficult. Only then can we build a real bridge between the people who divide us." But in his words, there was still an invisible tension, the same question that had been troubling him. "How can you change a country where people have become so divided?" Nora continued. "So, you don't think we need to take more decisive measures? Doesn't seem like this is really a fight for control." "It seems so. But instead of using force and aggression, let's try to find new paths, new opportunities for dialogue," Jimmy said, trying to keep calm in his words. These words were his response to a situation that could not be changed overnight. But every small step, every calm conversation, every response to injustice could be the beginning of change. In his eyes was a bright look, full of hope. And although the end of this interview remained open, what Jimmy had said already held great significance. Nora continued to watch Jimmy closely, trying not to miss a single word. The interview had already been going for over an hour, and the atmosphere in the studio was growing increasingly tense. Jimmy Carter sat, slightly leaning forward, pausing his thoughts before voicing each new idea. "And finally, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on the current political situation in the U.S., especially regarding Donald Trump?" Nora asked suddenly, knowing this question could be pivotal. A silence fell between them. Carter nervously adjusted his glasses and, seemingly without much thought, began to speak. "Trump. Trump, to me, is a symbol of how people can lose everything due to their own arrogance and ignorance," Jimmy said. gathering all his inner strength. He fuels hatred, breaks down what we've built over years, and all of it is for his own gain. He's a man who usually doesn't think about us, the people. He only thinks about himself. Nora turned on the recorder again, not taking her eyes off the former president, whose eyes now glinted with an invisible fire. She knew Carter had always been calm, but now he seemed different. Emotions were boiling inside him, and it was palpable even through the television screen. "This isn't just personal beliefs," he continued, now a bit louder. "I feel responsible for the people. I'm someone who was in power when our country could have united and truly changed the world for the better. Trump, on the other hand, has brought chaos. And this isn't just the problem of one president. It's the problem of a culture that allowed him to become a leader." Nora didn't respond immediately, giving him time to fully express his thoughts. "But, Jimmy, many people still support Trump, saying he changed the political landscape," she noted, trying to keep the conversation calm. "Yes, he changed it, and that's the problem," Jimmy replied, his voice growing firmer. "He changed it for the worse, and that process continues. You see what's happening, right? How the people are divided, how the country can't seem to find common ground anymore." Carter paused again, refocusing. Clearly, this moment was important to him. "As president, I would want to bring our country back to what we had. True unity. We have a chance to do that again, and I'm ready to take responsibility for that change." He looked at Nora, his eyes growing serious, almost with deep resolve. "I know I can do it because I know how this government works. I know how to rebuild ties with our allies, and I know how to restore the people's trust in the government." Nora stood before him, feeling the power in this moment. She sensed that this interview was transcending mere political talk. There was more to it. This was a moment of truth. "But what do we do when the majority of voters reject past presidents, believing that change can only come with new ideas?" she asked quietly, although she knew that the question no longer held as much weight now that Jimmy seemed determined to go all the way. "Ideas. New ideas," Carter repeated, his voice now softer, but still firm. "I'm not afraid to change the country, but we have to understand that change must be not just external, but internal. I know that you can change the system from within. It's not quick, but that's how we can make the country better. I've seen how a well-coordinated team works, where everyone has their role, and we all work for the good of the state. I'm ready to lead again, to show people that with the right approach, even the darkest times can be overcome." Jimmy took another pause, letting his words sink into the consciousness of anyone who was listening. "And if that means becoming president again, then I'm ready," he finished, looking at Nora with determination in his eyes. Nora didn't rush to break the silence. She knew that Jim Carter was ready to go all the way. The air was thick with tension. Every word he spoke carried weight, and she was certain that this interview would be one of the most important of her career. Knowing that now was the time to ask a tough question, she continued, "So, do you think the people who support Trump are wrong?" Her voice remained calm, but inside she felt her heart beat faster. This was the moment of truth, and she knew Jim wouldn't hold back. Carter took a deep breath, his chest rising, and he began to speak again, no longer holding back his emotions. "No, I don't think they're wrong. I think they're disappointed. And in many cases, they're disappointed with a system that doesn't listen to their voices. But what has Trump done with their disappointment? He's used it as a weapon. He's fanned emotions, played on fears, and made people believe we're in a war of all against all. He ignited flames and burned so fiercely that people started believing only he could save us. But the truth is, he's just looking for a way to stay on top." Feeling that he could finally speak his mind, Carter didn't hold back his emotions. His voice became even more persuasive, but also harsher. People can't blindly follow someone just because of their emotions. They need to choose a leader who is capable of compromise, someone who can unite the country. I don't want us to stay in a constant state of fighting, because that's not what America deserves. We need a leader who knows how to listen and act wisely. And that leader is me. I know I have the experience to save this country from self-destruction. The path Trump is leading us down. He raised his gaze, and his eyes burned with determination. People want change, yes. And I understand them. But they must understand that change can't just be in foreign policy or beneficial deals. It must be in the very foundation of our national soul. We need to restore the trust that Trump has destroyed, to rebuild respect for our institutions. I will bring America back to normal times, where political discussions don't turn into a brawl. Only then can we achieve what we want. Nora realized that this was no longer just an interview. It was a challenge. She watched him, feeling how each of his words reached her heart. Jim Carter wasn't just speaking. He was laying out his truth, and that mattered. But do you understand that many people still want the changes they only see in Trump? Nora asked, sensing that she needed to maintain the tension. Yes, I understand that, Jim replied with cold confidence. And I don't look down on their choice, but they need to understand that in the long run, it will only lead to even more chaos. I'm ready to take responsibility and show that we can act wisely, because that's what will ultimately save our country. Carter paused again, and a new wave of determination lit up his eyes. If I'm elected, I will be the leader we all deserve. Not a leader for just one part of the country, but for all of us. I can be the one who unites us again. That is my goal. That's why I'm ready to be president again, not just to change policies, but to change the country's course for the better. His words sounded as though he were already in his next term. Nora couldn't help but feel the tension rising in her heart as well. Nora sat on the edge of her chair, her hands gripping her notebook. She could feel the conversation shifting in a dangerous direction, but that was exactly what was needed. Jim Carter wasn't just answering questions, he was on the edge. His words began to sound even more powerful. Trump created a monster, Jim continued, not holding back his emotions. He told people what they wanted to hear, not what they needed to hear. That was the beginning of a divide we still can't shake off. He doesn't know how to work with people. He doesn't know how to find compromise. That's not leadership. It's manipulation. It's making the situation worse instead of improving it. Jim leaned forward, his gaze intense, and his voice deep and persuasive. You know what? I don't want to stay in this cycle he created. I don't want our country to collapse because of people who blindly follow his promises. We deserve more. That's why I've decided to come back, to bring the country back to normal. And these aren't just words. I know how to do it. Nora watched him, feeling her nerves tighten as he spoke with such passion. But she also felt that his emotions were exactly what she had been hoping for. This was the moment when he revealed his true self. But why you, Jim? Why Carter and not someone else? Nora asked, continuing to fan the flames. Carter didn't answer immediately. He paused for a few seconds, as if trying to find the right words. Then he took a deep breath and continued. I'm not in politics for popularity or to become an icon for anyone. I'm in this because I know I can change things for the better. Trump showed us that the person at the head of a country shouldn't be someone who only wants personal gain. I don't have that. I'm not afraid of big corporations. I'm not afraid to go against the system when necessary. I want to give people real power, the power that comes from harmony and common sense, not from shouting and lies. Nora sat, listening intently, watching his facial expressions shift as he delved deeper into his thoughts. Because I know how to work with people. I'm not afraid to put the country first, even if it means taking unpopular steps. I fought for the country when I was in the White House, and now I want to do the same. I have a plan, I have experience, and most importantly, I have the will to act for the good of all, not just for the benefit of a few. He fell silent again, and a pause hung in the air. Nora watched him and eventually couldn't hold back. And you believe America is ready for this? I believe in the people, Jim answered, his voice firm, his eyes filled with determination. Trump convinced people that we have no future, but that's not true. We have all the chances, and we need to seize them. I see a country that can be strong again, not through division, but through unity. And I'm the one who can restore that unity. His words hit like thunder. Jim Carter wasn't just expressing opinions. He was speaking as if the country truly needed change, and he was the only one who could make it happen. Everyone felt it, Nora and the viewers alike. I believe we can be better, and I will work on that every day if I'm given a chance, he concluded, looking directly into the camera. Meanwhile, the camera captured his expression, which radiated determination, and each of his words felt as though they were worth their weight in gold. Nora fell silent, unable to believe her eyes as Jim Carter suddenly changed his mood. His face, which just a moment ago had looked determined and calm, now shifted. He leaned forward again, but this time his voice was bitter and irritated. "Do you know why I can't leave this place and calmly talk about these things?" he said, growing more tense. "Because your question, your irony, it's part of what's destroying this country. You want to see drama, you want to make a show, not hear the truth." Nora tried to respond, but he interrupted her. "You don't understand. You don't understand why this is important. You, like everyone else, see politics as a game. And I'm not going to be a part of this comedy anymore." His voice grew louder, and the off-screen audience began nervously shifting. Carter stood up, threw a glance at the camera, and turned toward Nora. "I came here to convey an important message, but it seems you're more interested in creating conflict. You're not interested in constructive dialogue. You just want stunts. You want me to build this image of an angry politician who fights with everyone to boost ratings. Well, I'm not going to do that." Nora tried to ask if he wanted to continue, but Carter wasn't listening anymore. He gave her a grim look, then glanced at the camera, and in the next moment, he sharply turned and started heading for the exit. "You're not interesting to me, and it's clear to me. Now, excuse me, I'm not going to be a part of this spectacle anymore." The cameras captured his steps as he quickly left the studio, leaving behind a sense of frustration and unfinished business. Everyone was stunned. No pleasant resolution, just a burst of emotions and misunderstanding. Nora sat silently, staring into space, realizing that this interview had gone in a completely different direction than she had planned.